Welcome to episode 147 of the Grip Strip podcast, the Cup Series season review and more edition of the Grip Strip podcast. I'm Philip Matthew, I'm your host, and I'm here with, wait a minute, got to do this. I need to write this down. We need to write it down so I go and I don't have to keep on going back to my deal here. I have to copy paste it, or I think what we should do is you need to copy paste it into the group chat, one of our group chats. So let's see here. It's RTA. So we made that. I thought we've had that deal for a few. Oh, here we go. There you go. So, all right. So let's set it up properly. I'm Phil Matthew. I'm your host. And my co-host, he's a computer genius, an iRacing Indy 500 champion, a gentleman, and a scholar. His name is Joshua Fine. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing good, Phil. Another week where we don't have racing, but we got football. Jacksonville got cooked following up their big win against Baltimore. But we in the midst of that, and your San Francisco 49ers took a big loss, even though they won the game. Jimmy G falling out, but we gotta talk about everything that happened in the Cup Series, this year, and kind of review and take stock of everything that happened. So yeah, ready to talk about that, and glad to be on for another week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot to talk about and digest in regards to NFL now. This week, Jimmy G, insert porn star here that's going to go and help him rehab from his broken foot, playing the best football of his career, honestly, this year. And a big part of why the Niners are still relevant. The record that he has with Kyle Shanahan is outstanding, and the record for Shanahan without Jimmy Garoppolo is not pretty, but we'll see what happens with Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy starting against the GOAT next week on at home. Tampa Bay is playing right now against the New Orleans Saints for a battle for the NFC South to see who's going to get a 4 seed, probably under 500. They're up 3-0 at the moment, but we'll definitely dive into all things football. I mean, Josh's Jaguars avoided a massive loss of Trevor Lawrence, but then the Detroit Lions were just absolutely demolished them. And I mean, a great line or a great statement by Trevor Lawrence. He just said embarrassing. That's what he described that loss.
We got our asses kicked.
Yeah. So, I mean, he gets it. So, I mean, coming off of the best game of his career and then not even showing up, and then DJ Chark having 2 touchdowns or whatever or something, that also doesn't help. But, we'll get into that. I mean, Jaguars are kind of running out the string in their situation, trying to work on draft, but also put themselves in a position for next year in other ways, trying to evaluate talent. Doug Peterson is the right coach. Not sure about their GM, though. The Niners need to see somehow or another pick up the pieces with their third quarterback of the year and somehow or another win the NFC West, make the playoffs, make some sort of miraculous run. They'll end up having to go to Philly more than likely to win an NFC championship game. So that'll be an interesting situation for sure. But first, we'll have to get to play Tampa Bay this week. So we'll get into that. We'll get into fantasy. We're going to go and talk about all things NFL. Then Cup Series review, talking about Joey Logano's, becoming a Hall of Famer. I think that championship a few weeks ago basically cemented him as a Hall of Famer now. And he's in his mid-30s or early, whatever, mid-30s, early 30s, whatever. And he's got many years to go in his Cup career. And he's the face of, he's the leader of Penske's NASCAR program. So Paul Wolfe becomes a 2-time Cup Series champion as a crew chief. He did it with Brad. They got close 2 or 3 times together after that. So big deal for both of those. For Ford, considering how far back they were in general relative to Chevy and Toyota. So we'll get into all those things, talk about 19 different winners, the guys that made the Final Four, the parity that the Gen 7, I guess, yeah, I mean, the 19 different winners, and you can go and combine that into that. And then we'll also come up with a who underperformed in 2022 that is likely to recover and have a great year in 2023. We have a few different drivers we're thinking about there, so we'll go and discuss that. In terms of non anything else, of course, Supercars ended their season at Adelaide this past weekend. Scotty McLaughlin, of course, or not Scotty McLaughlin, he was there announcing, former 3-time series champion there. And his fellow Kiwi, Shane Van Gisbergen, gets another championship in dominant fashion. Does one of the most epic burnouts in recent history. So that'll be something target on. Sure, yeah, whatever. F him. Patrick Tambay. Well, rest in peace to Patrick Tambay. He just passed away, age 73. Yeah, so we'll look into supercars. We'll also look at Joseph Newgard and Scott McLaughlin racing in the Rolex 24 with the Rolex 24 testing going on. It started today, and then there's more to come from that. So we'll get into all that, and then Josh's sim segment and close the deal. So speaking of Josh, the Jacksonville Jaguars, rough day yesterday. It could have been even worse if Trevor goes down. It didn't sound or look good. I heard about that injury and the Lamar Jackson, but then, of course, they both got trumped by Jimmy. Trevor was able to get back in the game and play, but they were never in it. The Detroit Lions boat raced them, unfortunately, and they're actually now a sneaky. They're on a heater. Motor City Dan Campbell has this team rolling, and they could make the playoffs. Like, it's insane. They could make the playoffs, the Detroit Lions. And they're going to have 2 first-round picks because they have the Rams' first-round pick, which is going to be a top 5 pick, and then they have their pick, which is 15 at the moment, thanks to Peter King's Monday morning quarterback feature. That is a great read. So, I mean, I guess, Josh, where we start, I mean, your fantasy team, you're going to win. You're probably going to get number 1. You're going to get that $12 bonus for high points this week. Somebody other than Jeff, Wilson, or Steve. You'll be the first person other than those 3 that have won this year. So that's nice. And you put yourself in a good position into week 14 with a favorable matchup to go and make the playoffs. So I guess I'll give the floor to you to go and discuss what happened yesterday in both cases.
Yeah, of course. I think with fantasy, I want to talk about that one first because it's playoff time, getting ready to be in the playoffs in 2 weeks is when they start, and next week is the cutoff and everything. And I really needed to win this week. I scored 243, and I think what Steve has, I'm looking at it right now. He's got 138 right now, so yeah, definitely good game so far for me. Matchup really needed it, both in terms of points to give me a little bit better chance in case of a tiebreaker if it comes down to that, and then also just getting in the win column again, getting at 7th win. It's been a struggle this year, but we've been able to pull it out, and should be in 4th place after everything tonight, and being able to have a little bit of security going in next week. Just got to execute going into week 14, going up against Joe. So definitely want to be able to make it into the playoffs and everything. It won't be the worst if I lost, but certainly got to be able to control our destiny here and be able to make it in as the fourth seed, and then go into the playoff rounds and execute there. I'm talking like I'm actually a player, but like players gotta. I gotta maybe be able to set up the best lineup and everything, and be able to do all that stuff, and just watch the games or follow them, and hopefully get the most amount of points throughout it and go into the championship game. But which can be pretty tough, going up against Jeff and going up against Wilson there. So it's going to be interesting for sure. But yeah, the fantasy team this week. I mean, I was really worried about it. Concerned about it, but we pulled out in the end. You know, Derek Carr ended up having a good game. Started out bad with a pick six. Tyreek Hill, even though they lost, had a really big game. Derrick Henry, I mean, I was expecting a lot more from him, but they got destroyed by the Philadelphia Eagles. David Montgomery had a decent game. Cole Kmet had a decent game too. Najee Harris had a decent game. Geno Smith went off against the Rams. And then my defensive players, Donovan Wilson, Jonathan Allen, Foye Oluokun all scored 26 points each. So it's really helped me throughout. Debo had an okay game as well. Even with the Jimmy Garoppolo injury, still was able to produce, and that's gonna be question mark going forward. Is I've got two 49ers receivers, and now they're down to their third quarterback, so it's gonna be interesting how that affects the offense. If they're gonna rely heavily on Christian McCaffrey and Debo, or they're going to try to spread the ball around and everything. But it tends, young quarterbacks tend to struggle, and so we'll see how that affects the fantasy totals. But you got your two best players there, and Debo and Christian McCaffrey, and then also George Kittle. So we'll see how the ball target share goes around them and everything. So the fantasy team played really well this week. We'll go into next week and already trying to figure out the lineup for that, and we'll go into it and go from there, and hopefully come out a winner and be in the playoffs, and have a shot to win the championship belt from you. So hopefully I'll be able to do it this year. I've never, I mean, obviously not won the championship in your league, but in all the other fantasy leagues I played in, even my own, had not been able to win the title or anything like that. Came close a couple times, but didn't pull it out. So would be nice to got it into this one. So we'll see. But yeah, it's nice to get a big win like that, and then get the $12 bonus for having the highest point scored this week too. So glad that happened. And then of course the Jaguars. I mean, there's not really too much to say about them. Trevor Lawrence. I think that's the big win. They won because Trevor Lawrence didn't get injured at the end of halftime. So that's a win in itself that he didn't get injured. Obviously it looked bad. Live looked like he got rolled around, going to the ground, and it was low hit as well, which why did they throw a flag for that? I mean, he should be getting protected like some of these other big quarterbacks. So should have been a flag there, but looked like, I mean, at first it looked like the knee buckled and everything, and it looked like the knee was just like flopping around, or the lower leg was disconnected from at the knee, and it just looked really bad live, and thought that'd be it for the season, and possibly even going into next year. But he came back and was able to play in the second half, and even led them on a touchdown drive, and got a 2-point conversion there. So yeah, really good recovery from there. And he looked good. He didn't look like he was injured or anything like that. So we'll see what the injury report looks like throughout the week for Trevor Lawrence going forward, and if they have to sign a backup QB or anything like that. But yeah, the rest of the team not so hot. A lot of, I think, like at least 5 drop passes from the wide receivers. Zay Jones had a good game against Baltimore. 10 passes caught, and then for like over 100 yards. And then this game goes out and drops like, I think, 3 or 4 passes that he should have hauled in. So he's been really inconsistent, but there's no excuse for that this late in the season when you got a chance to close in on Tennessee to get within 2 games. They didn't lose ground to Tennessee, but they sure could have made up ground. So yeah, he had a bad game. A lot of other players. Travis Etienne fumbled the ball in the first drive of the game, and pretty much downhill from there. Defense, of course, that's the big one too. They got shredded. Didn't allow or didn't even force a punt at all. And the only time Detroit did not score was on their kneel downs at the very end of the game. So yeah, just really bad effort overall. I'm not really one to because a lot of times like people say, oh, this is atrocious, this is like horrible, and when they play, but describe bad play, but I normally reserve myself. But yeah, I mean it's hard to say anything good about that. There's really nothing good to take away from that. I mean, you could have chosen just to forfeit defense, and that probably would have been just as good as whatever they were trying to do. I'm not sure the issue is their coaching scheme, or if they don't have good enough players on there, probably just a combination of all of it, really. But we'll just have to deal with it the rest of the season, and hopefully they can figure something out. The last couple of games here, in the rest of the season, last 5 or 6 games that we've got left here in 2022. So we'll see. We'll see if that happens. If they can or can improve. I mean, to me, watching it on TV, I mean, in general, it looks like the Jaguars more of a finesse team, and the Lions, they're very physical. On both sides of the ball, it looks like just watching the defensive lines play against each other, and yeah, that's just what it looks like to me. And the finesse team is going to get outclassed every time against a more physical football team. So yeah, that's what it looked like to me. But we'll see what they do in the offseason. They got to get bigger inside. They got they don't have enough talent interior to run a 3-4 with more leaner players, I guess, than bigger player beefier players, and got to be able to have that on defense. So that's something you got to look at in the offseason. But for now, we just have to deal with it and figure out ways to rush the passer, because that was definitely not there at all this season. Either they got a couple of sacks on Jared Goff, I think, but I think those are just like cleanup sacks or coverage sacks or whatever. So that's gonna be something to look at going the rest of the way. So they play up against Tennessee this coming Sunday, so next Sunday. So Tennessee coming off a big loss against Philadelphia, so it's going to be an interesting matchup there. And they haven't faced the Titans yet this year, and they always, it's an interesting matchup. They always have to play the Titans tough, so we'll see if they can. The Titans are also a very physical team, so if they can go up against the Titans and play competitively, that'd be interesting. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but yeah, Jaguars, they still have a chance to make the playoffs, but they've got to win out pretty much from here on out. There's pretty much no more room for error as far as losses, and they got to go out and win out pretty much to get in. So not sure if they're gonna be able to do it, but there's still possibility. But yeah, we'll have to just carry on to next week and go on from there. But yeah, really disappointing effort following the big win that they had against Baltimore. So yeah, just not what I wanted to see for sure.
But at least you still have your starting quarterback.
Yeah, that's true.
The big story from the Niners yesterday, early in the game, gave up first play 75-yard touchdown to former 49er Trent Sherfield. And then soon after, James Garoppolo, or Heaney, in his haste to try to get out of a sack, got rolled up or whatever, and was down and then taken off the field. Wasn't able to play, and they announced it as an ankle injury. Has had an injury to his left ankle before, or one of his ankles. They took him out for the year a couple years ago. And then come to find out is fractured or broken left foot. So the magical mystery ride of Jimmy Garoppolo, all the hot ladies that follow the San Francisco 49ers and swoon over Jimmy Garoppolo, all the fans that were thinking that this could somehow or another manifest into that Super Bowl championship. Well, if it's going to happen, it's going to be on the arm of Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy from Iowa State. He played pretty solid. He was able to run the offense in a lot of ways. It looked just like a shorter version of Jimmy, way he ran the offense yesterday. CMC did work later in the game. Early struggled, but once the game started kind of getting away from Miami, he was able to kind of feast both passing in the passing game and in the running game. Uh, Debo had a good day, and Brandon Ayuk was able to do work as well. GK somewhat quiet, but I think he's going to become a bigger part of this offense now with Purdy at the helm. In general, I don't the way the offense is and it's run and all that. Purdy seems very confident in himself, and he stood up to pressure all day, and he did work. I mean, it's crazy, but they're still in the mix. They're still leading the NFC West by a game. They have the tiebreaker on the Seattle Seahawks. They're going to be playing them here in a few weeks' time. Reality of the world is everything is in front of the Niners. Outside of really the Philadelphia Eagles, I don't fear anybody in the NFC. The Vikings are not that great. I don't care what their record is; they're not that good. Yes, they have an MVP candidate in Justin Jefferson, who's probably the best wide receiver in the NFL. But they've flirted with disaster multiple times this year. And the fact is, eventually that jig runs out, and that'll happen in the playoffs. Depending on who they get in the first round, for sure. Niners, if they can win the division, they'd be a 3 seed. More than likely would play somebody from the NFC East, have a home game, or they might play. I'm trying to think who else would be left because all the NFC teams or East teams are in there. But then, other than that, I mean, the North is a dumpster fire. Green Bay is kind of doing something now, but it doesn't matter. Aaron beat Chicago, and he's their daddy. Detroit is on a run, of course, as we mentioned, but they're a couple games behind the Commander General Redskins. And then, so it's really about just keeping everything in front of them. And Taysom Hill just scored a touchdown. So the New Orleans is up. And they're up. So Taysom Hill is lined up as a tight end or something. I don't know what they want to call that. And he went and scored that touchdown from Andy Dalton. So, Jimmy getting injured, it was brutal, but they were able. Nick Bosa is making his claim for Defensive Player of the Year. It's either him or Micah Parsons. I mean, they'll probably give it to Micah Parsons because he's a cowgirl, but Nick Bosa leads the league in sacks with 14.5. He got 3 yesterday. Tua did not look great at times. He was missing passes all day. He hit 2 big ones, but he missed a lot of other ones there. They did break the streak of 4 games in a row where the Niners hadn't given up any points in the second half. He got that 1 touchdown to Tyreek Hill, but after that, they didn't have anything. They couldn't run the ball. They didn't try to run the ball. I'm trying to do my Jim Mora from back in the day. The great former 49ers who said they had way more talent, and Mostert and Wilson had 33 yards between the two of them rushing, or 37, something like that. So, Miami gets humbled a little bit, and now they have to recover, play on Sunday night in LA against the Chargers, and Justin Herbert, who now the Chargers need to kind of put something together if they want to make a playoff run. I mean, the division, they're never going to win that division because of Kermit the Frog, but they still have a chance to possibly get a wild card if they can get on a run. So, Niners, they play Tampa next week. The defense is at a different level. It's got a lot of vibes to when Peyton Manning basically half a guy somehow or another took the Broncos and won a Super Bowl, or Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl with that Baltimore Ravens defense with double murderer. It's kind of got that feel, or Brad Johnson in 2002 with Tampa, when they had that elite defense, and they showed Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks, who was two of the three pillars, John Lynch being the one in the back end that were the defense that made with Tony Dungy for a lot of time with Tony Dungy, and then Gruden went and won that Super Bowl. So see what happens with that. But it's not the end of the world. It's unfortunate. Do I think they're going to win the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl? I had a way better feeling about that prior to that injury than I do now. But Brock Purdy is probably one of the more probably the most serviceable backup I've seen in the 49ers in a long time. I'm thinking, and they'll try to deny it, but Trey Lance, his recovery might actually get accelerated a little bit on the notion that, they may have to call him back into action. And that would be quite a story if that happens. But we'll see what happens with that for sure. In terms of fantasy for me, it looks like I'm gonna win today, unless Tom Brady and Chris Godwin go nuts. I have Rashad White in this game, and he isn't really doing anything. I left a ton of points on the bench, and I had two people basically go over. Hayden Hurst got hurt, and Joe Mixon didn't even play. But Joe Cool, who's probably my favorite, outside of my 49er players that I'm a fan of, I think my favorite player in the NFL is Joe Burrow. The guy's an absolute animal. And he beats Kermit the Frog. So I like the fact that he has the number of Kansas City Chiefs. He didn't even have to throw it to Jamar Chase, even though Jamar Chase made that one-handed catch and went out of bounds. He did throw it to him, but he threw it to Higgins. He spreads the ball. Samaje Perine coming out of nowhere as a backup, running like an animal, crazy guy. I mean, Cincinnati's dangerous, and with the injury to Lamar Jackson, that could be a problem. Now we're talking about everything, Josh. So, what else? What other takeaways did you have from the week this week, and some of the players that are kind of inserting themselves into the mix, for some of these awards and some of the teams that are in contention?
Yeah, of course. I think, I was watching the Sunday Night Football game against the uh, Colts and the Cowboys, and that was a complete blowout of a game there. You had, it was pretty competitive until the beginning of the fourth quarter. Then Dallas just ran away with it at the end. But yeah, that's a game that could propel Dallas, all the way to into the playoffs. Not going to say play or Super Bowl run or anything like that, but definitely they're going to get tougher. They prove that they're going to be a tougher team to beat. The more what people realize. So that's kind of what I took away from that. I think Dak Prescott might be pretty good. And then also their defense is really, really good, I think, for the Cowboys. So it's gonna be a tough watch for other teams. I think other games that you talked about, the Chargers and the Raiders. The Raiders suddenly are back in contention, and the Chargers, they gave up an opportunity to really be able to move up in the grid, possibly to get a playoff spot. And it's really disappointing because I was trying to I'd like to see the Chargers try to contend in the playoffs. The Jets, I think they're the weakest team currently ranked in the playoffs right now. They've they've had a couple of losses. Of course, the debacle with Zach Wilson, but then also, Mike White. I mean, he seems like he's good in a pinch, right? But then, at the same time, I wonder how sustainable that is. You might have a couple of plays that look good, but going up against other teams that already have their quarterback situation figured out, it's going to be tough. And they're facing the Vikings, and the Vikings are on a roll right now. So yeah, I think the Jets have some tough sledding just because they have a bad situation right now with their quarterback. So it's not looking good. The Ravens, they had a narrow win against Denver Broncos. Uh, Lamar Jackson possibly has an injury. Don't know if it's going to keep him out. But Tyler Huntley is replaced him in the game and managed to get the win. So, we'll see if he's able to produce anything. He's comfortable in the Greg Roman offense. So if he can, maybe not put up Lamar Jackson numbers, but be sustainable, I think they'd be looking out for that. Try to get themselves placed, well into the playoffs. So, yeah, that's something to look at. Pittsburgh's still, in the hunt right now. They defeated the Falcons. Falcons not looking as great, but they still have a chance as well. We talked about the Lions. Lions obviously are right up there as well. A couple of spots away from being in the playoffs. Seattle Seahawks, of course. Geno Smith goes out and wins the game for the Seahawks. So they've got a good chance being a wild card team. Uh, Giants and Commanders, they both tied yesterday, which is surprising. And I thought maybe that the Commanders might win over the Giants, but they both tied. And I think it's always entertaining when teams tie, uh, and nobody wins. That's actually just really great in my opinion. And you know there's been at least 3 or 4 other games this season where it came down to the final minute and, looked like they were gonna tie, so, that's just really entertaining to me to see a tie record, and not only the Giants and the Commanders, but also, the Jets or not the Jets, the Browns and the Colts also have had a tie, so multiple teams this year, you only see usually, like, maybe 1 team, you know, or 2 teams that have a tie in their record, but, you have 4 teams, so it's kind of entertaining, to me for whatever reason, but, uh Eagles, of course, number 1 seed. I don't think that's gonna change. The Vikings just gotta take care of business. Buccaneers, obviously, they're playing right now, but, they're very, very weak, I think, as a team. And you have Tom Brady struggling, against Andy Dalton and New Orleans Saints, so, not looking good there. But yeah, oh yeah, and the Browns are also still in the hunt as well. And Deshaun Watson, not sure how good he actually looks. He's definitely looked rusty, uh, being 2 years almost away from football. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I took away from all the games. Coming down to the final month of the season, we'll see if what the playoff situation is going to look like. I think, 3 teams in each conference have probably locked it up. Bills, Chiefs, Ravens, Eagles, Vikings, 49ers. But I think, the last, spots, the last division, the AFC South, NFC South, and then 3 wild cards, I think are very much up for grabs. So it's going to be interesting to watch, going the rest of the way here in the season.
Yeah, and one thing that they've been mentioning here is the last game of the season that'll end up being on Sunday Night Football, the regular season, as it stands right now, could be the Baltimore Cincinnati game in Week 18, which could be for the division. Obvious as it stands right now, they're tied, and Baltimore is ahead because of the head-to-head from earlier this year. Hopefully, I don't know if the Bengals have to play Cleveland again, but for some reason, Burrow can't beat the Cleveland Browns, which is ridiculous. But yeah, the South Division in both the NFC, AFC and NFC are terrible. The Titans have been routinely beaten down the last couple of weeks. They have no offense. They let their best player, other than Derrick Henry, of course, go, and he went and did work yesterday against them. So that is there and all that. So Philly is a game ahead of Minnesota, but really Philly, I think, is a couple of steps ahead of Minnesota in general. The Vikings yesterday they had to fight to beat the Jets and Mike White at home, which to me says something about how. It's a good thing they have Justin Jefferson. It's a good thing they have some of the other players that they have, because there are definitely holes with that team. And I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was prior to Justin Jefferson, or maybe he was a rookie, when they went to San Francisco in the playoffs, and they had to go there in the divisional round, and they got destroyed. And I think Jimmy threw 8 passes in that game, or some crap, or 4. I don't know. It was some craziness that or 12 passes or 11 passes, some nonsense. So but I don't think they are definitely not what the record says. Niners, of course, as I said earlier, they're going to be in a fight with Seattle till the end in that division. Bucks and New Orleans are basically playing for position at the moment, because the Saints are 4-8. So actually, if they were to win, they'd go to 5-8, and the Bucks would be 5-7, and they would be a game ahead of the Falcons, but they're taking their bye this coming week, the Buccaneers, and then they'll come back and play, or after this week's match, after this week, this week they're playing the Niners. What am I saying? So yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. Bengals are rising up right now, and it's bad news for a lot of teams. They're the defending AFC champions. They went to Arrowhead and beat Kermit the Frog last year. They were at home yesterday. They beat Kermit the Frog again. It's Joe Burrow. He's a freak. I love how Urban Meyer would talk shit about him and treat him like garbage, and didn't think he had any talent. And he literally transfers to LSU and becomes a Heisman Trophy winner, wins a national championship with Jamar Chase. Yeah, tells you how great of an evaluator old Urban Meyer is. He tried to go and destroy Trevor Lawrence's career too, so it tells you a freaking idiot that he is. But yeah, so Miami, rough game yesterday, have to bounce back. Right now, the AFC is definitely there's some teams, the Raiders we would have never thought a few weeks ago that they would be in the mix, but now they're only 2 games out. Chargers losing that game to the Raiders is going to be big. Patriots are scuffling. They have no offense. Matt Patricia, for as bad of a head coach as he was, might be a worse offensive coordinator. And I guess Bill Belichick likes how he tickles his asshole with that crazy beard or something, because he is god awful. Him and Joe Judge have no clue how to call an offense. They've made Mac Jones also looks clueless out there, which is not good. So, Pittsburgh is still in the mix. Actually, they're only 2 games out. So they're right now. We're getting with 5 games to go in the season. I would say there's 12 teams in play. In the NFC, you could probably go. Carolina was off. If they can get on a little bit of a run, that division is a dumpster fire. They just waived Baker Mayfield, so they just wasted draft picks to pick up Baker Mayfield. Now they're waiving him, and people are all over saying, "Oh, the Niners are going to sign him," but then somebody else is going to probably pick him up just for the sake of picking him up after the injury to Jimmy Garoppolo. But yeah, the NFC South is so bad it doesn't really matter. They're one of those teams is going to have a home game in the wild card round of the playoffs, though. The Commander General Redskins are just outside of the playoff, so the whole NFC East would make the playoffs at the current in this current rate. Two out of the West at the moment, and then one out of the North and the South. So Lions are rising though; they're playing great. 5-1 the last 6 games, or something. 4-1 in the last 5, or some crap. Aaron throwing to Christian Watson, trying to make him the new Devontae Adams. Seems to be getting there, and at the same time, Devontae Adams with his good buddy Derek Carr are with Josh Jacobs. The three of them are trying to keep that rudderless ship that is the Raiders alive. So plenty to look at. Right now, only 2 teams have been eliminated: the Texans and the Bears. The Rams and Broncos are close. It'll take a little while for some of these other teams probably to start flirting with elimination, but out of the playoffs. But yeah, that's that for NFL for this week. I mean, in terms of fantasy, I'm winning. I think I went 3-0 this week in all my teams, but I'm in the have to win or have to give myself a decent chance with good score to make the playoffs in all those leagues. So it's going to be a rough, tough, difficult week this week. Tough matchups in each league, but it is what it is. I mean, not having Joe Mixon play and Hayden Hurst, and then leaving the likes of P. Ryan and Brian Robinson and DK Metcalf on the bench, you would have thought that would have hurt me, but when you have, Trevor came back, did all right. Joe Burrow, as I said, 286, 2 touchdowns, rushed for 11 rushes for 46 and a rush touchdown, so 3 total touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 2 touchdowns and on 11 for 114 and 2 touchdowns. Tony Pollard had 12 rushes for 91 and 2 rush touchdowns. So, and Diggs 7 for 92 and a receiving touchdown on Thursday. So that was basically those 4 guys carried me. And I'm going to need a similar type of performance, if not more, and hope that Joe Mixon can play, probably play DK Metcalf, and hope that we go nuts against Jeff. And then I need a good performance in my other leagues to possibly get there as well. So we'll talk about that next week on the GSP. Okay. So yeah, let's get into the Cup Series review. So first of a bunch of them that we're going to be doing here over the next few weeks in between our holiday break. The first, all the major series we usually cover here on the GSP we'll go and get into. This year, Cup Series, Joey Logano comes through, wins at Las Vegas in the round of 8, punches his ticket like he had done a few years ago at Martinsville. He said he was a favorite, guaranteed a championship, and did it. He did it again this year, was able to beat Ross Chastain, of course, of the Hail Melon, and William Clyde Elliott II, and Christopher Bell in the Final Four at the shithole that is Phoenix Raceway. And, I guess we go there first. I mean, Joey Logano, to think that 10 years ago, Josh, he was out of a ride and Joe Gibbs had quit on him, and it didn't look great. He only had 2 Cup wins in his career. He was definitely third fiddle there at Joe Gibbs Racing. They had hired Matt Kenseth to take over the car, and Joey Logano, the guy that was the best things in sliced bread, Mark Martin found him. Brad Keselowski went to Roger Penske and said, I think we need to look at him. And that decision by Penske, it's not like Penske he's known for making good decisions. It's why he's a billionaire, multi-billionaire. But picking up Joey Logano might have been one of the greatest moves that Roger Penske's ever made in his motorsports, history, because He's won him. He won him the Daytona 500 again. He's won all these big races. He's won 2 championships, and he's young, and he ain't going away anytime soon. So Joey Logano is one of the most talented drivers in the sport. People don't like him, and I think that's because of he looks like a pizza face, and he looks like Gilbert. He has like the Gilbert Gottfried voice, and he whatever, and he says frig, like in all these other crap. But the fact of the matter is, Ford wouldn't be anywhere without him. Harvick is probably going to quit, so they need him. And yes, they have a few young pieces in place with Gumby, Cindric, and YRB, the legitimate most popular driver in the sport, and Chase Briscoe. But other than that, I guess you could hope that Harrison Burton and Todd Gilliland can get there eventually, but they're raw. And then in terms of their talent, the rest of the talent in the Ford pipeline, it's literally Zane Smith, the Truck Series champion. They have nobody else. So Ford needs somebody to really lead. And Joey Logano this year, in a down year for Ford in general, Josh, was able to come through and carry the Blue Oval to another championship in a year that was definitely dominated by the Chevys and the Toyotas. What were your thoughts on Logano? And we were mentioning this. Honestly, he became a Hall of Famer a few weeks ago when he won that second championship. It was borderline. He was a Hall of Famer before that, but he definitely is a Hall of Famer now with that performance at Phoenix a few weeks ago to get that championship. So he goes into this season, he's 28th in all-time wins with 31 and 2 Cup Series championships. I think the next marker would be to get to his former mentor, Mark Martin, who he beat to win his second race of his career at Pocono. He's 9 wins away from that. He's tied with Martin Truex in wins. He's 1 away from Hall of Famer Dale Jarrett, 2 away from Hall of Famer Fireball Roberts. So those are, and Kurt Busch is 3 away, former Penske driver, of course. And his former teammate Brad Keselowski's at 35 wins, but you would definitely hope that he could go out and win again next year. But I would say that Joey Logano, though, is everything looking forward for him the way things are going now as a 2-time Cup Series champion, Josh.
Yeah, of course. Joey Logano, this year, really, we talked about it before with Joe on here, but, with Logano this year, throughout, before the playoffs, he wasn't really, a dominating driver per se. Didn't really, outside of Richmond in the fall, and Darlington, didn't really have any races where he was dominating, as a driver like we've seen him in the past. The 2014, 2015, that was really, where he had a lot of races where he was up front a bunch. But similar to 2018, he just happened to win at the right time to be able to make his way into the championship and then the final race of the season, they were able to just run up front, put together a good car, and win the race. Throughout the season, he he won at Darlington. He bumped Joey or William Byron out of the way, and he got the win there. Then didn't really win it. He won at Gateway, the final restart duel with Kyle Busch there, and that was a pretty good over/under move to get around Kyle Busch, and then didn't really have anything except for Richmond in the fall and got past pit strategy by Kevin Harvick and everything. So that was a missed opportunity there for a win. But then at Las Vegas, just happened to be up front at the right time at Las Vegas and got the victory there. And then from there, going to Phoenix, all you had to do was be up front and Ford had been good at Phoenix already from the spring. Chase Briscoe and them had won it. Uh, Phoenix in the spring, and so it's pretty reasonable to expect that Fords were going to be really good at Phoenix in the fall. At the last race of the season, and that it's exactly what he did. Qualified up front, and with this car, next gen car, on short tracks and road courses, we know that it's a bit tougher to pass, and that's what he really benefited from is being tougher to pass and um, having to just be up front and make everybody else work really hard behind you. You only had to really face Ryan Blaney throughout his teammate throughout the race to get a challenge from the lead. So Logano just managed to win at the right times when you need to. When you win the first race of the round of 8 to make it into the championship 4, it gives you time to prepare for that final race, and your team can prepare. Bring up the setup. You can start mentally preparing yourself on how you're going to approach that weekend and whatnot. So being the first one to win, not having to worry about being eliminated or having to claw your way into the final round, like kind of like what we saw from Chastain. When you don't have to worry about that, you can just focus, and that's what he was able to do uh, to win Phoenix. So yeah, of course, throughout the year, Logano was solid but not great, and Ford just happened to put the right motor, the right car setup at the right time. So he was able to go out and win this championship, and kind of similar to his like you said, 2018. In 2018, he only won at Talladega. That was his only win throughout the year, and then at round of 8, got to Martinsville and managed to bump Martin Truex out of the way on the last lap. Even though he was leading in that race a bunch, he still managed to bump Martin Truex out of the way to win Martinsville, and then was able to basically put on a really good pass at Homestead to be able to win the 2018 title. So he kind of came out of nowhere there too. And then this year, just happened to be there at the right time and convincingly won the championship in the final race of the year. So yeah, really good year from him, and yeah, I think you definitely put him in Hall of Fame conversation now. And then by the way, he also won the Busch Clash at the beginning of the year as well. So didn't even mention that, but he went out and won that race. So it's almost like he won 5 races this year. I mean, he did win 5 races this year. So wins that race to kick off the year, and then he caps off the year with the title. So bookending the season with race victories, Joey Logano did. So yeah, kind of a interesting year overall, and you just happened to be the guy at the end that could win. So especially in a year of parity where we had a lot of volatility in who could win throughout the rest of the year. So yeah, that's kind of what I took away from Logano's year. And he was aggressive when he needed to be with the wins he saw at Darlington, Gateway, and then he was able to win and put put together a race where it counted at Las Vegas and at Homestead.
Needs to be clutch, and Joey was. And you may have not had it in this format, and Junior mentioned it on his podcast, but it's like in this format, you just have to be in the right. You put it in the right place at the right time, and you could go and win a championship. You don't have to be good the whole year. And honestly, in a lot of ways, it doesn't really make that much of a difference the later it gets into the playoff. See William Clyde Elliott, who basically was non-existent this whole entire playoff. See Kevin Harvick a couple years ago dominates the regular season and then falls out of the final 4 in the final race. You have to clutch up in the last 10 and really at the round of 8 you have to be at a different level. The first 2 rounds you can kind of skate by, but if you get to the round 8 you have to be on point to get through, and Joey Logano did that. 32 years old, 2-time Cup Series champion. It's crazy. I mean, Daytona 500, former Daytona 500 winner, of course, and in 2015. Pocono. Yeah, so those are the 2 wins. He won at Michigan. I'm looking up his wins of his career. I'm trying to figure out where he's won. Yeah, he's won at Bristol a couple times. He's won at New Hampshire a couple times. Yeah, that was Kansas. That was the year that that wasn't. Yeah, no, the next year at Kansas was the when Matt Kenseth sent him to the moon. Watkins Glen. Yeah, he's good at. Yeah, he's won at Bristol a lot and Talladega, and so it's interesting with him. He has got certain tracks that he's really good at, super speedways. Won the championship at 2 different racetracks. So he won it at Homestead years ago, Michigan. He's been, of course, in Ford's home, Las Vegas, Phoenix, Kansas. So Kansas, and and he did win the All-Star race, or the shootout or clash or whatever the hell. And that leads into I think the piece that 19 different winners this year, most ever in the history of the Cup Series in one season. We had lots of first-time winners. Gumby wins the 500. Chase Briscoe wins at Phoenix. Ross Chastain at Coda. Let's see. Daniel Suarez at Snoroma. And who's the other one? Who am I forgetting? In terms of first-time winners in Cup, there was 5 this year. Oh yeah, Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick won his first race this year. That's another one. And Ross Chastain. Then it was Blaney won the All-Star race with his window net down. That was hilarious. Daniel Suarez. Yeah, Tyler Reddick at Road America. That was and so that was the 5 first-time winners this year. Or wait a minute. Bubba had won. Yeah, that's right. He won.
Yeah,
last
Bubba
year,
won too,
Tally,
but
and then
not
he
his
won
first
this
time
year
winner.
too. Yeah, it
And
wasn't
Chris
the first time
Buescher,
winner.
not a
Chris
first time
Buescher won
winner.
for the first time winning in like 6 years. So
Yes, it
it was a
almost felt
huge.
like a first win, and the other one was by weather.
Yeah, and I was there when he
Yeah.
won his first race. So big win for him and RFK, first win for the new RFK team. So so you had all these different winners. You look at the points and see what happened with this Gen 7 car. There are definite positives. We talked about the good and the bad here the last few weeks. I think it has opened up the game a little bit, gotten some teams back in the mix, like the RCRs of the world. Some teams are still off. See Stuart Haas. Martin Truex Jr. had a lot of bad luck and finished 17th in points, but he probably was a top 10 point scorer overall. Ryan Blaney was consistent but couldn't close, but ended up making the final 8 without a win, and made it in on the bump in 16th place. Or wait a minute, it was 16th, because they had 15 winners in the regular season. Because Austin Dillon was literally the only person that didn't wreck at the end of the Daytona race. But so many different winners. You had the clash at the Coliseum with Logano winning. It was a interesting year. The Hendrick cars early in the year were definitely up front. They won 3 of the first 5 races, and so that was an interesting start. And then we saw signs from Trackhouse, and that was one of the teams that really made a huge step forward this year. Is Trackhouse Racing, taking from the pieces of Ganassi expanding to a 2-car effort. Ross Chastain becoming a championship driver this year, or championship a level driver, and Daniel Suarez getting into the playoffs, having a career year. I mean, there was a lot of good things to see. Some of these smaller teams being able to get up there and compete against the Gibbs, the Hendricks, the Penskes of the world, and make things happen. I think that was a plus. Cookie cutter tracks racing was good. Short track racing and road course racing, not so much. The safety of the car, definitely not good. So those are things that they're hoping to work on. The Garage 56 concept, I think, is going to help a lot in that. But Josh, the fact that we had so many winners this year, and you didn't really know, there was no real runaway. Like the year before, of course, Larson won 11 races, I think, altogether with the All-Star. But usually it's a runaway. There's usually dominant figures. In the other series, that was the case. But in the Cup Series, it just seemed like it was very random at times, and he really just had to be up there and take advantage. Pit stops got faster because of the single lug. The one guy on Bell's team almost jacked his hand up trying to put the tire on a pit stop. Showed that on Twitter. That was pretty gross. But last pit stop at Phoenix. But I think the net, it's a net positive. I think the next Gen 7, but there's definitely work to do. And unfortunately, Kurt Busch is not going to be driving full time anymore because of this car. We don't really know how healthy Alex Bowman is. Other guys have had injuries. So they have to work on this to make it safer and more functional across more tracks that aren't super speedways, which even the super speedway package is not amazing because they're demolition derbies now. I mean, most super speedway races are demolition derbies, to be fair, but it's more like that now with this car. The cookie cutters are really good, but other than those, it doesn't really matter. So, what are your thoughts on all these winners, man? A lot of first-time winners in the Cup Series, and fresh blood coming into the sport with Cindric and the rookie battle. That wasn't really a rookie battle. Everyone knew Cindric was going to win it, and he literally won it at Daytona. But he had a solid enough year, made the playoffs, and didn't embarrass himself. But he was good in qualifying, but couldn't really do it in the races. So it's interesting to see what his progression will be. And then we saw glimpses from Todd Gilliland and Harrison Burton late in the year. So that might give them hope and energy going into 2023.
I mean, there's a lot to take away from that, but I mean, yeah, I think, in general, just if you look beyond the fact that they were first time winners, that we had 5 first time winners here in Cup this year. I mean, one, they were all drivers that had been due for a win for a long time. You look at Tyler Reddick, been on the Cup Series since 2020 and has had multiple opportunities to win a race in his career and just hadn't been able to get there. So, after at some point he was going to win. He was also a 2-time Xfinity champion and, won them back to back and had a lot of good races there. So, he's definitely somebody that was bound to win at some point. And to be honest, I guess in a way it's almost kind of surprising that he became a road course expert all of a sudden this year. But RCR has been doing a lot of work on road courses, so it's not completely out of the realm. But that's one driver. Daniel Suarez, Ross Chastain, Trackhouse. I mean, I think they've got to be as a team, they're the surprise of the year. Just how well they competed this year, both of them. Chastain also, had some good races, and you could tell it was going to happen at some point with how he was running at the beginning of the year. Suarez, had a lot of bad luck as well, but he managed to finally get one at Sonoma. So you had those victories. Uh, Cindric, I mean, that was, really just kind of a, you know, luck of the draw, kind of just being out in front. Um, yeah, having that luxury at Daytona, and Chase Briscoe, just, I think he just executed the strategy perfectly. And then he's also somebody that we probably knew would be a winner at some point, but maybe out of all those five guys, maybe Briscoe and his season maybe might have been the weakest out of all those, but you know, uh, ended up having a chance to go to the championship at the end. But he had a definitely good season. But really overall, I mean, I think it's just the way that this car performed, because you're really on the edge of control throughout a lot of it. Because at any point, the way that this car is designed, you could spin out just randomly in the middle of the corner. So that I think that's something to think about. Also the fires as well, the rocker panel fires that we saw happen. Just a lot of bad things with parts failures. Just the uh, the suspension issues that we saw this year with the um, linkages and things like that, braking on cars in the middle of races. Just making contact with the wall, causing issue with your suspension and breaking the suspension. That's something that we didn't see last year, where you could hit the wall and keep going. And of course, this car you can hit the wall and keep going, but you definitely have to make a pit stop to be able to continue on. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things, of course, saw at Texas, it was basically a curse to be up front, at Texas, and, just couldn't, uh, you know, whoever was at front at the end was going to win. And, you saw the, Martin Truex spinning out, Kevin Harvick spinning out, Alex Bowman spinning out as well in that race. So definitely a lot of volatility that's happened, throughout all these races because of the reliability issues with the next gen cars. So yeah, that's another reason why we had so many winners this year, and now we have 19 winners this year. So yeah, definitely a lot of guys that had the opportunity to win, that were fairly competitive throughout the year, and just managed to turn that into a victory. And also, I mean, look at Daytona, the way that the second Daytona race ended. Austin Dillon just happened to be up front and just was able to miss the big wreck that took out everybody because of the rain. uh the Austin, Cindric winning the Daytona 500, mentioned that as well. Kyle Busch, basically the only reason why he won the dirt oval race at Bristol was because Tyler Reddick and Chase Briscoe
Briscoe ran through him.
got into it on the last lap, right? So that's the only reason why that happened. Uh, Eric Jones kind of benefited. I mean, let's be honest, did kind of benefit from the issues Kyle Busch went through and Martin Truex went through at Darlington, and happened to be up front there. And Darlington, another track that's hard to pass. So once he was up front, it was going to be really hard for a guy like Danny Hamlin in that race who finished second to be able to get in front of him there. And then also look at Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher, I think he benefited a lot from. I mean, he was up front too, so it's not like he wasn't good, but he did benefit from the tire issues that happened at Bristol on the pavement, at the end of the summer. So that's all. A lot of those guys were one-time winners. I mean, the other one-time winner there is Bubba Wallace and Alex Bowman. I think Bubba had a really convincing win at Kansas. They didn't lead the entire race, but they had good speed, and they had also had good speed at Kansas back in May. So that's a fairly convincing win there. Alex Bowman, just had a really good restart in the race at Las Vegas at the beginning of the year. So he was able to go out and outduel in the final restart with Kyle Larson there, and he only led. I think he only led 137 laps on the year, so he was not really out in front at all. But just had one really good race where he was able to win. And yeah, I mean, I think all those guys, they're all one victory guys. And then the rest, you have guys that won multiple times, like, you know, Chase Elliott, Larson, Logano, Chris Bell, Kevin Harvick, Tyler Reddick, he was also another first time winner. So I mean, those guys are really the guys you got to look out for next year. The ones that were multiple time winners. So that's gonna be something to see next year. Is do we regress back to kind of back to the mean where we have maybe 12, 13, 14 winners throughout the year. So that's going to be something to look out for as we go into 23 with this new car and everything. And, of course, there's going to be changes and whatnot as well. So, yeah, that's, I think you talk about the volatility that happened this year in the series. And I think it's really just because of the new race car that really was the cause of all the volatility that we saw this year.
In that sense, change is good. You look at those guys. I mean, Ross Chastain wasn't going to make the final four based on what he was doing the year before for Ganassi. But then he became a factor. Trackhouse racing became a factor. And that's why one of the many reasons why Justin Marks decided to get into this series when he did. He ran Project 91, which looks like is going to be a player here with more races next year, along with some of these other efforts are trying to make a play. There aren't that many owners. There aren't a lot of people that are trying to fill fields other than the charters, which is an issue too. Charter prices seem to be out of control relative to the general, the way that the sport is going. But Dale Jr. can't get a charter, it seems, which I think is crazy. There's some other charter nonsense going on here in the back end. I'm thinking that 78 cars are right in the mix for that, and the Rick Ware cars at a minimum. Though Rick Ware now they're going to be with RFK, essentially becoming a 4-car team there. But we'll see what happens. The Clash is a couple months away now, but a lot to look at for 23. We'll see what happens with these drivers who can make gains. I mean, Christopher Bell was able to have a great year or get himself into the mix. One in clutch situations, proving what Toyota has seen for many years, proving what Joe Gibbs has. They've ran drivers out of that car. See Joey Logano, see Eric Jones. Both of them, of course, were able to have solid enough. Of course, Logano gets the big hardware. Jones gets a second Southern 500 victory and wins for the King and GMS as they now expand as an organization in a lot of ways, change it up with Gagson taking over the 42. They're getting whoever his crew chief was as well, who worked with Eric Jones and worked. So there's a lot of connections there. So there's a team that has a chance. Jimmy Johnson, of course, is now a part owner. So he's back in the Cup Series. So that's another positive, but I'm sure that he's going to be a player and somebody's going to be talking about the safety aspects and other things too that need to be improved in the racing itself, which hopefully they'll change. But it is SOD and running the show, and I'm not so sure. But we will see what happens with the Cup Series. I mean, those three guys in the Final Four, when we would have picked our Final Four at the start of the year, I doubt that we may have had one of them, maybe two at most. And more likely would have been Clyde and Joey Logano. But you'd have figured a Hendrick car and a Penske car probably would have got there. You'd have thought a Gibbs one or a Toyota would have got there. Toyotas didn't have a good end of the year. Kyle Busch didn't exist for a good part of the year because of his contract situation. And now he's going to RCR. And I think that leads into this topic, Josh, who underperformed in 22 that is likely to improve in 2023. If you look at the driver points standings, I look at guys that were, that didn't have amazing years. I mean, Martin Truex at the end of the day finished 17th in points, which is crazy to think a guy who's been a champion in this series, a guy who has um, been a winner for many years, but didn't win a race this year, and then was left out in the open there. Finished 17th in drivers, 18th in owners. Of course, Kyle Busch is another one, but there's a few people I was thinking. Those are two that come to my head. But who are you thinking as a driver or drivers that have a chance to make a step forward from where they were this year, Josh?
Well, I think, besides Truex, I think the most obvious one is Kyle Busch, and just really the last 3 seasons for Kyle Busch have not been really that great since he won his 2019 title. In 2020 didn't win until Texas fall race. 21 won at Kansas, and won at I think he won at Pocono, but that was it. And then this year, just happened to be the guy still running at the end when Chase Briscoe, Tyler Reddick got into it at Bristol Dirt, and had other opportunities out throughout the year where he could have won. Darlington comes to mind. There's probably other races where he was up front, in the last portion of the race, but something happened where there was an engine failure, a crash, or failed to execute pit strategy, or just happened to get outraced by somebody. Look at Darlington, or we already talked about Darlington, but Gateway, with Logano. There was multiple races throughout the year where just failed to get it done. And so I definitely expect Kyle Busch, and not only failed to get it done, but also just where they just weren't good throughout the weekend, and were just off the pace compared to where we normally see him. So definitely expect Kyle Busch, throughout 23. He's going to be on a new team, but they've already gotten to work already. If you saw on socials this weekend, he was at Coda with his teammate Austin Dillon getting some road course practice in. I think they won in their class with the World Racing League, so he's getting off there good start. And I think as he gets acclimated into Richard Childress Racing, he's going to help that team, elevate that team. He's going to be the guy that's carrying them on his back for sure. With Austin Dillon being who he is and everything, but Kyle Busch has an opportunity to prove that he still's got something in the tank left, and I think he's going to a good team. The number 8 car won 3 races with Tyler Reddick last year. There's no reason why they can't not produce that same type of result. So I think he's gonna untap a level of potential that we haven't seen from RCR in quite some time. So I think that's somebody that is more than likely I think will recover. I talked to you about it in pre-show, but I think Kyle Larson kind of had a underwhelming year relative to his performance from 21. Obviously championship run, 10 wins in 21, only had 3 wins in 22. But I mean, from the time that he won at Fontana, to the time where he won at Watkins Glen in the summer, very long period of time, almost 6 months without a win, going from the end of February to the middle of August. So a long time where he went without a win, and especially in the early portion of the season, he wasn't really that great. I think kind of started to settle down, in the beginning of the summer, and started to get better, but big fumble there in the game, in the Saints game, Bucks game. But Kyle Larson did not have that great of a year until basically until the middle of the summer, and then picked up the win. Had an aggressive restart where he was able to take away the win from Chase Elliott, and then dominated at Homestead. So if they would have had a better playoffs, and I think they underperformed there too, but if they had a better playoffs, and especially the second round, he definitely would have been a contender for the championship, not just in the owners' championships. So I'd expect him to produce better results in 23, and see if they can. I mean, I'm not expecting a repeat of, or a redo of 21 where they had 10 wins, but they definitely need to be up front a lot more and push Chase Elliott and all that stuff. So yeah, that's the other driver who I think I had on my list of drivers. So I think underperformed it. I think can bounce back and have a good year in 2023.
Yeah, I agree with the Larson pick, and I mean Kyle Busch definitely is one that stands out. He's getting into a great situation with the 8 car with Randall Burnett. That's a team that was on the cusp. They had bad luck in the first round. Honestly, if I had made picks for the playoffs, I would have thought they would have at least made a couple of rounds, or at least one round. They got knocked out early, so Tyler Reddick, of course, will be moving over to 2311 next year. So that's one driver. I mean, when it comes to, I'm curious, like, I just want to go and bring up the points again. The driver point. I mean, I look at this, I mean, you make the playoffs. It's hard to say that, but I mean, Kevin Harvick he won 2 races for Stewart Haas. It's been a little bit of ever since 20 when he won the 9 races. The last couple of years have not been as good. Of course, Stewart Haas has fallen behind. They won 3 races as an organization this year. What is he going to do? He's been a championship contender for so many years. He's on the back end of his career at this point. He's debating retiring. They've made changes at Stewart Haas Racing at the 41 car, at least for now, with Ryan Preece. I think the organization, I'm saying Stewart Haas Racing as an organization, is someone to watch that has underperformed recently. In 20, they were really up there, but they've been off the last 2 years. Chase Briscoe has a lot of potential. Gave away Charlotte in the 600, had one of the best cars at Gateway, qualified on pole, and had a random cut tire and never was able to get back up through the field. He was fast in qualifying at times, especially on road courses. Had opportunities at times to win races in the round of the whole playoffs. They ran at in a level that above what they'd been doing all season. And so the future is with that organization is on him. But what is Kevin Harvick going to do, and what possibly could be his final year in the Cup Series is another thing to look at. I would also speak to Alex Bowman. Martin Truex probably is dealing with a lot of stuff away from the track, Cherry and whatever, and that her health, and then some of the other stuff that's going on within the team. Of course, Blake Harris leaving the team, the longtime car chief, to go and become a crew chief. They have not been the same team, but I think they haven't been the same team since Cole Pearn left anyway, to be fair. Alex Bowman, speaking of Blake Harris, is now going to come back coming from a concussion. And he's definitely the 4th out of 4 at that team. But now he has a different crew chief for the first time in his career. Will that matchup work well for him? Because Byron was able to get a crew chief that worked with him, and he's made progress. Larson comes to Hendrick Motorsports finally and gets with the 48 team, and forgetting who his crew chief is, but that Cliff Daniels, and they hit it off great, but last year didn't go so well. And then Gustafson and Clyde have been together for a while. But what will Bowman do this next year? Because he's fallen a bit behind. He was not really up there. Yeah, he won that one race, as Josh mentioned, but he was not that great, to be honest. And he's on social media and he takes a lot of heat. But, when you look at your teammates, Larson kind of covered for him because Larson underperformed in certain ways, like Josh mentioned, after winning 10 races in an all-star race last year, or in 21. to go and not really be up there after that is kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean those are a couple. I mean Brad having the year that he had, but he had two massive point penalties for infractions, rules infractions that basically derailed him. He had fast cars at times. Busher proved that at Bristol, and Keselowski at the end of the year seemed to be a little better. So there is potential for the 2012 Series champion and part owner of RFK Racing. I'll add one more. Ryan Blaney didn't win a race this year. Yes, he was up there. He's the highest finishing driver. It's hard to. You could say, well, how are you going to give a guy who had 12 top fives, which is up there? I mean, only what is it? One, two drivers, and he's tied with three others, most top fives, and he had 17 top tens, which is pretty solid. 13.6 average finish. His teammate who won the championship had a 13.5. He had a better qualifier, even though he had one less pole than Joey Logano. But I kind of look at it in this way. Ryan Blaney, they put a lot into him. And in general, I think he is legitimately the most popular driver. Him and Bubba are probably two of the most popular drivers in the sport, one way or the other. But when is Blaney going to have that breakout? When is Blaney going to close the deal? Is he ever going to get there? And that's a question. I don't think they're getting rid of him. Penske's definitely not going to get rid of him. He's a marketing. He's they love him. All these sponsors love him, and he's solid. But closing the deal, he always seems to have issues closing, especially at the 500. He wasn't able to win this year, and it's like you have the talent that he has, and he has the new crew chief for last year with Hassler and all that. But I honestly think he needs to take that next step if he really wants to be that big time driver in the sport and join his boy Clyde as a champion and his teammate as a champion before we really start thinking about, okay, what are we dealing with here with Ryan Blaney? So that's one other one. I mean, there's some other guys that probably I think are going to take steps forward in general, but it wasn't just about underperforming as much as it's like, okay, maybe this was the first year, changes happen, et cetera, et cetera. With a second year, they'll probably make some improvements in general. So we'll look at that for sure in 2023. Is there anything else that we didn't really go over? I mean, we talked about the Final Four drivers and all, and is there any other points from this season that you think are pertinent that we didn't go over there, Josh?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, you talked about Bowman. I will say one thing about Bowman is that his numbers are actually pretty much par for what he's done so far in Cup. I mean, obviously, concussion and everything, lowers his stats a little bit. But I mean, for top fives, top tens, wins, and laps led, I mean, it's pretty much, and average finish is pretty much on line with what he's done so far in his career. I mean, 21, he had 4 wins, but, most of those wins came because he got lucky or he just executed the strategy right at the end. So, he was up there in 21, but, it was kind of one of those false hopes, I guess, that he'd actually, turn into something there. And, so we'll see if they're able to turn around or, perform better in 23 with the new crew chief and everything. So that's something to pay attention to. I mean, no, not really. There's nothing else. I mean, we could pick a driver who we think is gonna just like have the opposite performance. Like, okay, we just said people who have underperformed, but who's somebody that we think overachieved in 22 that will underachieve in 23, I guess. I mean,
What do you think?
I'm gonna go with and I mean it's hard. There's a lot of guys that you could go with here. But I'm gonna go with Denny Hamlin. I think he over. I mean, he had a lot of races where they weren't really that great, and he managed to get in because he performed really well in certain situations, and won a race. Got in, but for if it weren't for the playoffs, I mean, they would be ranked significantly lower than where they were. So I think Denny Hamlin, especially as the team owner role continues to increase for him, I think Denny Hamlin's gonna underachieve. Like it's gonna be a lot closer to what he like standings wise where he should have finished this year. I mean, I think he's gonna have a lot more underwhelming year than what people expect from him.
That's an interesting choice, but one that I could see. I mean, he's been at this for a while. 2006 was his first year in Cup full time, and he's come so close so many times at a championship, but he's won a lot of races. Um, at some point, there has to be a letdown. Uh, and now he's in a contract year too, so that's an interesting dichotomy too, with the fact that he's in a contract year, whether he's going to stay at Gibbs or he's going to go and drive for himself. There's all kinds of moving pieces, and we already see how well Joe Gibbs handled Kyle Busch's situation. They'll blame it on Eminem's leaving, but I think there's a lot more to that. And it speaks to how he's doing things. And then now that Keebler is going to move up full time to that car, and knowing that he's probably going to be given a lot more emphasis because he's grandpa's, whatever. He's his grandpa owns a team. I think there's a lot to look at in Joe Gibbs Racing, what could happen to them. And with Toyota only being a very small outfit, only 6 cars, if Joe Gibbs is not performing at a high level, racing is not performing at a high level, it's not good for in general. I do think that 2311, they have their own autonomy though, and with that driver combination is going to be good. Especially Reddick, I think he's had that career year this year, and he's just going to keep on going forward. And I think he's going to be able to push Bubba to be better, and Kurt being involved with that team, but not in a driver role, but more in an advisory role. Let's see. I mean, in terms of the drivers, who do I think was great this year that's going to go and take a step back next year? It's got a, what is it? I had it over here anyways. I literally had I shouldn't have gotten out of that. I got rid of J Ski and then I went to Racing Reference, but then I had the points. In terms of somebody who I think there is a lot of people to pick there. I really think there's like two names that I'm thinking. I mean, the crazy. I mean, Larson had 13 top 5s and 19 top 10s last year. He wasn't as far off. He had more top 5s than Clyde and one less top 10, and one more pole, won 2 less races, but he wasn't as convincing. I feel like there's going to be a letdown within the Hendrick organization. Now, which one is it going to be? Is it going to be the 9 car? Is it going to be the 5 car? I don't think it's going to be either of those. I think William Byron is going to fall back because essentially his momentum was at the start of the year. He won those 2 races at Atlanta, which is now a super speedway race, and then he won Martinsville at night when literally you couldn't pass. And I mean, they can't pass on short tracks anyway. William Byron, after those 2 wins, kind of disappeared. In the end, he finishes 6th in points this year, so I think that's the best finish of his career. But only 5 top 5s, 11 top 10s. I mean, Briscoe, after the brutal regular season that he had, was almost there with similar numbers, in terms of top fives and top tens. And his starting position was only less than a position behind and a couple positions behind in finish. And Chase Briscoe was driving for one of the lower teams in terms of the top tier and was barely making it in by a thread into the playoffs. And he made it happen in the playoffs. That's probably why it's so close. I think William Byron, that's going to continue. He was able to make it happen late to get that sixth place finish in points, but I think he's going to be the guy that's going to take a step back because they're going to emphasize the 5 and the 9. The 48, they're going to want to prop up a bit because he's Alex Bowman, whatever, new crew chief, all that new energy. That's a piece. And then, I don't really rate William Byron that highly. I know he's won in all these different levels, and he's won Xfinity Championship and all that, but I just don't get it. I think in a lot of ways he's got that. He's there a lot because of whatever his dad and the ridiculous college that he was part of, but in the end, he just doesn't impress me that much, and I don't think he's going to do that great next year. But hey, might be wrong, but we'll see what happens with that next year. Let's get into the roundup here for this week. Not that much racing, as we mentioned. The supercars were at Surfers Paradise, and it was a Shane Van Gisbergen double. I think he won virtually it seemed like he won virtually every race this year. He dominated the series to win this to win another Supercars championship. I think it's his third of his career back to back now. So since Scott McLaughlin left, he's won the last 2 championships. The last race for Holden, since next year there'll be Chevrolet teams. Now it'll be Chevy Camaros and new Ford Mustangs with the Gen 3. In race 1, Shane Van Gisbergen, David Reynolds, Chaz Mostert, Will Davison, Cam Waters were your top 5. Anton De Pasquale finished 6th. You got some people over there. And then in race 2, SVG, Chaz Mostert, Will Davison, your podium. David Reynolds, 4th. Brody Kostecki, 5th. Cam Waters finished 7th. Anton De Pasquale, 10th. The final standings see Shane Van Gisbergen win the title by over 500. Over 500 points. It was like that's 96 and 496 and 500, like 550 points. It was a dominating year for him. He won Bathurst. We'll see. Can he go and do a three-peat and join some of these other elite drivers over the years in supercars, the likes of Scaife and Peter Brock and Dick Johnson, and put himself at that, and Craig Lowndes, all these great drivers, put him at that elite level while he's dovetailing in other series and might actually come run NASCAR next year, possibly, depending on the schedule. We go from the supercars to the Snowball Derby. Derek Thorne goes and wins the Snowball Derby in Five Flag Speedway there. So, Derby, yeah. So he gets the win. He's been up there for the last couple of years to go and get these victories, to be able to do what he has to do. He's been dominant, and now he can go and say he is a winner. Led 307 of 318 laps with the overtime because of different caution, whatever. He's ran second the last 2 years, led over 200 laps in the last 3 races. So he's been at a different level. And then it's interesting, the team that he's been running for, he's not going to be racing for anymore. So that's something too. So that's the last time they're in a race together. So that is a big win for Derek Thorne. Trying to go and get the rundown. It'd be nice if I could get that. No, we don't have it there. Let's try to go this way. That's qualifying. I want the race. Yeah, the race. Josh Berry did beat Thorne for the pole, but had issues during the race, and that got knocked out late in the deal. Derek Thorne wins over Sammy Smith, who's likely going to be an Xfinity driver for Gibbs next year. Stephen Nasse, third. Casey Roderick, fourth. Cole Butcher, fifth. William Byron was the best Cup interloper, Big Three NASCAR Series interloper, finishing sixth. Ty Majeski, the former winner of this race, Final Four in the Truck Series, finished 10th. Carson Kvapil, making a rare super late model start, finishes 12th. Bubba Pollard, 13th. Daniel Dye, 15th. I think Giovanni Ruggiero must be Reggie Ruggiero's son, so it's cool to see that. You had some of the other guys like Derek Kraus, who's in the Truck Series, Gagson, of course, 1920th. Luke Fenhouse, who won a SST or SRX race in Slinger in the first season, finished 21st. Josh Berry finished 25th. Hunter Robbins, longtime late model competitor, married to what's her name? Joanna Long, finished 26th. Jesse Love, 27th. Corey Heim, 28th. And Eric Jones, 33rd. Augie Grill finished 36th and last. Brad Keselowski did try to make the show, but failed to qualify out of the last chance. So interesting for him. So we'll see what happens. It's a tough race to make, tough race to win. Derek Thorne gets that victory and gets that big trophy on his mantle. Going into some of the other NASCAR news, they announced, there's nothing really on the Cup side. Josh Berry is going to have Jarrett Companies come back, so more or less his entire schedule is covered. He just needs another 7 races. He has the Bass Pro sponsorship. He has the Jarrett Companies, and then he's also going to have I forget what the other sponsor he had. He has 3 that he definitely has locked up, and then they're probably working on more. Bailey Curry and Brennan Poole are going to be driving for JD Motorsports next year full time. They're looking to bring up third car back, the number 0. Sage Karam announced that he'll be running limited races for Alpha Prime. So we'll see what happens with that. Dean Thompson, who was basically a non-factor driving for Nice Motorsports, takes his money and goes to Tricon Garage, aka David Gilliland Racing, to become a full-time driver for them. So they'll run the Grays, or Taylor Gray is going to jump in, I think, in the 3rd race because he's not 18 yet. Tanner Gray is going to run the full season. Dean Thompson's going to run the full season, and Taylor Gray is going to probably need to win a race to make the championship. So we'll see that. There's rumors on where Haley Deegan's going to be. It seems like the rumors are saying that she's going to go to ThorSport if they change back to Ford. The only other option, really, if she's running a Ford, is front row. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll probably bring that up next week or in future weeks here as we go along. Big story came out today. Joseph Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin, teammates at Penske Racing and IndyCar, will be racing for Tower Motorsports in the LMP2 category. Of course, Penske Racing is going to be debuting their Porsche 963 in the GTP class in the Rolex. So that'll be big. So these two guys will drive with Kiffin Simpson and team owner bronze driver John Ferrano. So Kiffin Simpson's running in Indy Lights, NXT, whatever, for I think Andretti or somebody, or Ganassi. He's a Ganassi supported driver, Kiffin Simpson. So pretty solid lineup there, and they're going to have a good chance to win the LMP2 category at the Rolex come end of January. Patrick Pilet will join the Porsche Pfaff Motorsports Porsche Plaid effort there, and he'll be joining them and along with Klaus Bachler. So that'll be the new team. Lawrence Vantor will be a part of the Enduros. And then, of course, Matthew Jaminet and Matt Campbell are moving to Porsche Penske Motorsports' 963 effort. So that'll be interesting. They're trying to go for 3 consecutive championships in the IMSA GTD categories. So they won GT Daytona in 21. They won GTD Pro in 22. So this is for GTD Pro this year, or in 23. We had so those are the couple of news pieces. Other pieces, if you really want, I would give credit and say go and check out John Daggas, Sports Car 365. He's really good. Let's see. Get through that. On motorsport.com, got some F1 stories. Supercars are talking about they're going to randomly allocate engines, so that'll be something. American Legion is going to be the primary for Alex Palou and what will probably be his last year for Ganassi. And the 10 car, and they're talking about Helio Castroneves still looking at options to run Daytona for the 500. So we'll see what happens with that. Trying to see what else we got over here. Oh man. Let's there isn't. Oh, Brock Feeney. Oh, so Brock Feeney actually won. I missed that. Okay, I didn't see that in the results. I didn't know there was 3 races. Yeah, Brock Feeney's major supercars. Feeney took her final race. Okay, so victory in the first victory in the state. Brock, he beat yesterday's winner. What the heck? Now I literally read the results and it shows SVG winning. Oh, that's why. That's okay. I was reading the wrong results. Lovely. That's great. So I apologize for that. I was reading results. It's because I was on motorsport.com. They don't update their thing. So there you go. I knew that Shane Van Gisbergen did win one of the races, so now I have to go and give you the points again. So in Adelaide, in Adelaide 500, Chaz Mostert won the first race, and Brock Feeney won the second for his first career win. Chaz Mostert, Nick Percat, James Courtney was your podium. Brody Kostecki, Tim Slade round out the top 5. Winter bottom, Will Davison, Brock Feeney, Andre Heimgartner, and Lee Holdsworth. I guess that burnout was, so I was wrong with that too. Lovely. It says my day today. The burnout was for locking up the championship. SVG had to start dead last in the field and only finished 20th in race. So that was probably his worst finish of the year too. In race 2, Brock Feeney gets his first career victory over Chaz Mostert, Anton DePasquale, Cam Waters, Andre Heimgartner, your top 5. Will Brown, SVG running the number 1. Brody Kostecki, Lee Holdsworth, James Golding round out the top 10. The championship standings, Cameron Waters ends up 615 points behind SVG at the end of the season. Cam Waters was in a battle with Chaz Mostert all year. Finished, 60, like 73 points ahead of Chaz Mostert. Then the 2 Ford Shell V Power Racing drivers, Anton DePasquale, Will Davison, Brock Feeney in his rookie year, finishes 6th in points. So good on him. And we'll see what happens. Supercars, there's been announcements, whatever, drivers, and there's some changes coming, but nothing really to the extreme there in terms of supercars. Not crazy changes. The biggest change, of course, is the car. The new Chevy Camaros and Ford Mustangs. So that'll be the big story next year in the Gen 3 car. Trying to see over here if there's anything else to go over. It doesn't look like it. So we will move to the sim segment, Josh. And what are you looking at in regards to that? I know things are slowing down a little bit, so there might. What are you looking at for iRacing and other gaming?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're about to be at the the end of the year, on on iRacing, and it's week 13 once again on iRacing, and it means there's gonna be a lot of new content coming up, coming up soon. I think the release for week 13 uh should include the Toyota GR86 uh, car. I think that's one of the new cars that's coming up. That's going to be available to race immediately. It's going to be, I think, a Class D car, so people will be able to series, so people will be able to race it immediately. But yeah, I think that's the new content right now, that people will be able to race. Still trying to find some news here on where what else is going to be new. There's been some rumors on what they might be able to put in for the upgrades for 2023. Rain, I've heard they might be talking about rain possibly as or weather. Wet weather racing is a possibility, but I'm not sure. That's something that's been on the table for a long time. That it's always been rumored, but it's never come true in iRacing. But we've heard about it a lot, and I don't know if they're finally going to put it in, but they might. It's certainly a possibility, and they very well might have it. Yeah, Toyota GR86 is the new one. BMW LMDH possibly could be up there for testing, um, things like that. But yeah, it's definitely season 3 release notes here. I'm about to look at it here in a minute. But that's on the horizon. I had to look into my iRacing account to look at the news here, but yeah, iRacing December update for 23. Yeah, the BMW Hybrid V8, that's the new one. The AMG W13E Performance Toyota GR86, as I've already said. Lincoln Speedway circuit, Denevers. So I think the old French Grand Prix, before they got rid of it in 2008, or before, the circuit that held the French Grand Prix before the current one. Upgrading the which one?
Manny Core.
Yeah, that one. That one, and then the Sebring is going to be updated. They're upgrading the art for Sebring. The Ford Mustang FR 5000 is or FR 500 is going to be updated. The active reset, so you can reset your car on your track session with only a couple of buttons, rather, I guess, than what they were doing before. Off the track, I guess they're increasing some of the, or improving some of the track physics with dirt, like, surface acclimation of, dirt and marbles on the track. Start zones. Let's see. Starting grids expanded up to 60 racers. That's going to be a lot. GT3 receiving updates. iRacing AI has been improved. New damage model for some of the other cars. So yeah, that's some of the updates. I mean, some of it's like a lot of, you know, small updates. Some of it, big updates like GR86, the hybrid V8 for BMW, the Formula One W13 for Mercedes. Yeah, a lot of big changes. AI racing for the 87 cars, so that might be interesting there. And then more AI racing at 23 tracks on the service, so that's going to be interesting. And new setups, I guess, for everything. So yeah, it should be interesting to see some of this changes, and definitely gonna be able to test it out this week. Like to, the Toyota would like to try that. The BMW probably like to try that as well. Week 13 this week. It's a lot of that's like a lot of unranked races. We've got figure eight racing with the Ford Mustang at Irwindale. That might be interesting. Unranked racing, 13th week ridiculousness at Watkins Glen with the 2008 Riley Daytona prototype, Global MX5 Cup, Aston Martin DB9, and then the Corvette GT C6R GT1. That might be interesting. We got other things like, let's see, 13th week, Legends car on the Daytona Rallycross track. Might be interesting. 13th week, let's see, Ferrari challenge at Daytona road course. That might be interesting. We got 13th week truck series racing at Daytona. Yeah, this the 13th week iRacing Truck Series ranked at Daytona, scheduled this week. What do they got? Michigan, Daytona, Charlotte, Talladega, Homestead, Chicagoland, and IRP. So those are all pretty good truck tracks. 13th week Street Stock Series at Langley Speedway. A lot of the short tracks: South Boston, Lanier, Legends Oval, Charlotte Oval, Southern National Motorsports Park, USA International Speedway, which no longer exists, asphalt track. So yeah, it's week 13 in iRacing. It's all the fun, like for fun series that doesn't really count or is unranked, and allows you to do anything that you want if you like to or whatever. So there's that. 13th week iRacing Blizzard Series, Chevy Monte Carlo SS, Five Flags Speedway. So a little bit of late model action, with the not really the Snowball Derby, but certainly something resembling the Snowball Derby. So yeah, that should be interesting. All these new cars and tracks and stuff to go and shake out, in between the regulated racing on iRacing as we begin 2023 season 1. So should be interesting there. Definitely gonna be ready to try that out. So yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I did buy the Fanatec pedals last week as part of their Black Friday Thanksgiving sale. So Be looking forward to getting that soon once that comes in and install that and have some new pedals. Be interesting to try out the brakes, the load cell brakes on there. So, and I've seen some reviews already, and it looks pretty exciting. Just waiting on the email that has the tracking number, so I can put that in and follow that, so I can get it installed. So looking forward to getting that once it comes to the mail. But yeah, that's pretty much it for iRacing this week. Got the Twitch stream, of course, as always, Twitch TV/USiller2 whenever I'm on, and you can watch my streams there and see all the stuff I post for iRacing when I do. So yeah, that concludes Sim segment. Of course, closed as I mentioned. Twitch TV, USiller2, go watch it on there for all the racing stuff and video game content. Twitter, JP Huffine, go on there and see all my takes on Jacksonville Jaguars and whatever news and racing and other news and stuff that I've got on there. Go on my Twitter and look at that. Of course, follow our YouTube page at Gripstrip Podcast. Go on there and subscribe to our page and like our videos and like our content and subscribe to all our stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for me this week. It's always, feel glad to be able to do it with you, and glad to, as we continue to close out the year, talk about the remaining weeks that we have in our fantasy football league and seeing, where we end up here in a week and, how the playoffs are going to shake out. So yeah, glad to be able to participate in that.
Absolutely, brother. Wouldn't do it with anyone else. Great we are able to do this thing and enjoy it, talk about all kinds of racing and football, and give a good different perspective, good perspective. So it's a great balance between the two of us here on the Grip Strip Podcast. You can find us at Grip Strip Pod on Twitter. You can find me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. You can find the Grip Strip Podcast basically anywhere you get podcasts. Any of the major platforms, we're there for the Grip Strip Podcast. We can find us on YouTube at Grip Strip Podcast and posting the shows there as well. You can find it at philipgmatthew.com. So those are the things where you can find me. We will be back next week for episode 148 of the Grip Strip Podcast, and that we'll do IndyCar. We'll do the IndyCar recap next week on the Grip Strip Podcast. So that'll be fun. Will Power gets the championship, but there was an intriguing season for sure. A lot of different winners and a different Indy 500 winner for sure. A lot to talk about there. Changes coming in drivers for 23 and still to be determined, really, some of the drivers. So we'll get into that next week. We'll get into the football and who made it into the playoffs or who's likely to make it into the playoffs in my league and in all of my leagues. I mean, other than the one, I think that's going, we have 2 more weeks in that one, but this is the last week this week. So we'll see what happens with that, see what our actual teams do, and we'll talk about it here on the Grip Strip Podcast. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Thanks for listening to Grip Strip Podcast. Take care of yourself. Be good to one another, and we'll see you around next week. Take care.